Are the New York Jets about to debut brand spanking new uniforms in 2024? There's some sexy hot rumors going around that they are, and we've got the man that's got all the juice. Let's get into it.
Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas. What's poppin', everybody? Welcome to Boy Green Daily, a daily New York Jets video show, also available wherever you get your friggin' podcast. And there is some uniform action happening for the New York Jets. The 5-year rule has come to a conclusion after 2019 and the Gotham Green, Stealth Black, and Spotlight White editions that we got, which means the Jets were eligible for some New Jersey action. It sounds like they could be getting it. But let's find out with the man himself, Jake friggin' Asman, one of the, if you had to build a Mount Rushmore of Jets content creators, there's a pretty solid chance that this ginger mother trucker would be on there. That's for damn sure. So let's bring him in. Jake gosh darn Asman, baby. What's up, Jake?
Boy Green, what's going on, man? I appreciate the wonderful introduction as always.
And look at that. You got the ESPN, the mothership, the Jake Asman show, the beautiful background, man. Spectacular. Wow, Jake. Look at that.
Game changer. It was time to update the backdrop, and this is the first podcast appearance or YouTube appearance I have made with the new backdrop. So there you go, Boy Green. We're making history.
That's an exclusive. Well, let's make some more history, baby. Just give it to us right now. Make the announcement. You come along with the Jets, that the Jets have reached out to you to formally announce this on the Boy Green Show. Let's just break some more news, baby. Legacy uniforms, full-time ride. They're coming. Come on, make the announcement, Jake.
So I have heard from a couple people that the Jets are making changes to the uniforms and that the legacy uniforms are going to become permanent. Now, I want to make it clear because I don't know, somehow misquoted, or I saw a couple outlets like run with this idea that, you know, the Jets have decided that the road jerseys are white and the home jerseys are green. And I never said that. All I said on Twitter was, I have heard that because the 5-year rule is up, and for those who don't know what that is, the NFL requires anytime you make a change to a new jersey, you have to wear them for 5 years before you could change them. So the Jets wore their new current jerseys from 2019 to this past year. That's 5 seasons. So I have been hearing that when the Jets initially announced the throwback legacy uniforms for last season, the plan all along was to eventually make them permanent. And I've heard that this is going to be the offseason that they do it. But I am not saying that, you know, they're going to wear white at home and green on the road or vice versa. Because as we've seen, the Jets mix and match the color of the jersey home and away all the time. So I have just heard from a couple people that I trust that this is coming. I also was standing like 5 feet from Jets owner Christopher Johnson over the summer at Revis and Klecko's Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremony when Woody and Chris were having a conversation with Steven Markowitz of the Jet Lounge, aka at Brooklyn 929 on Twitter, Sack Exchange for those on Jets Twitter. If you're unfamiliar, he's a huge Jet fan, tweets about the team all the time. He told me, and I believe him because I literally watched the conversation happen, that basically Chris and Woody confirmed the same thing, that, hey, you guys are going to like the new jerseys. Don't blame me for them, is what Chris said, because Sack was complaining about the current jerseys being awful, which a lot of Jet fans would agree with him. So basically the owner confirmed what I had been hearing. And then I saw Brian Costello, I think, said on a Twitter Spaces the other day that he's hearing the legacy jerseys are going to be permanent as well. So I've heard it from a lot of people. Someone that is an employee of the team. No, it's not Joe Douglas. No, it's not Robert Saleh. And I've also heard it from people that are around the team that this is coming. So I feel pretty confident in saying that at some point we're going to get a jersey announcement this offseason that the beautiful legacy jerseys are going to become a fixture moving forward.
Yeah, we saw it, as you mentioned, the 2023 season. We saw it twice, week 1 and week 4. Both of those ended up being primetime games, and they were the whites at home, were both of those. But I think what a lot of people are tantalized about is, of course, if you make them a permanent jersey, that we will finally get the other. Which shout out to Jake B, who's doing all kinds of great stuff on Twitter. The green jerseys, the Kelly Green action. I think that's what we're all hoping for right there, baby. Is that is Popsky. And there's also all that other stuff that you mentioned. And I know it gets serious when Jake Asman and Sack Exchange are doing exclusive interviews with UniWatch, who's, of course, the number one, site and observer of all things uniform wise. There's all those nuggets with the Jets jersey sales as well. A lot of people have been bringing that up. So, yeah, they're going to take all my money if they release one of these. I'm just going to be honest, Jake.
Dude,
Yeah.
me too. Me too. And it really is exciting because I mean, fans have hated these uniforms they currently have. They haven't done any winning in them, which I think contributes to a lot of it. And ultimately, like the throwbacks, they kind of look modern now in today's world. Like, yes, they're throwbacks, but you can't tell me that wouldn't look really, really cool on an active Jet. I mean, the legacy uniforms week 1 that they wore, and obviously week 4 against Kansas City as well, they just looked fresh under the lights. They looked sharp. The color scheme was awesome. It was simplistic, but it wasn't too simplistic, if that makes sense. Like it looked sharp. It looked like a really cool look for a franchise that desperately is in need of, some positive vibes after the season we just had as Jet fans. So I think it's a no-brainer. Now, people have asked me, have I heard anything in regards to, what they would do for a third jersey? Would they keep, the current alternate black jersey? I haven't heard anything in regards to that. The only thing, once again, I've heard is that the Jets have every intention of making the legacy jerseys permanent. And as you just showed on the screen, introducing a green version of the whites they already wore this past year. So I hope they have a black version of those jerseys, because that would be sweet as well. Or maybe they bring back, the Namath era throwbacks, or the 98 through 2015 look. There's options for the Jets as far as a third jersey goes, but I would love for them to make it official with, the legacies becoming the primary, green and white jerseys they're going to wear most games.
Speaking of the jerseys, this is a polarizing topic. I don't know where you stand on this. Are you a fan or not a fan of New York Titans jerseys? I used to love those personally. Over the last decade, we saw them in splashes in the Sanchez Mangold era.
I used to like it when I was a kid, and now I don't want them to go back to it. I think because maybe I was naive to just how awesome some of the Jets' other looks were in their history that they could rock. That they should rock something that says Jets and not New York Titans. Like, who cares about the New York Titans? We're all about the Jets, baby. To quote you.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So give me like a Namath era throwback, or something from like the early Boomer Esiason, Keyshawn Johnson era of Jets football, if you will, or even if they wanted to run back like the mid 2000s look, like that's fine with me as well if they wanted to do that. But I'm also certainly on board with an alternate where it's just the black jerseys, because you can only have 3 total jerseys, a home,
Correct,
and away, and an alternate. So the Jets are going to have to decide between a throwback versus do we have black jerseys, especially if they get the Black Friday game as an annual tradition. So it's going to be fascinating to see what they do.
All right. Well, now it's official. We're now we're in conference championship week for the Final Four in the NFL, and all the extra curricular activity in the AFC is just dead. It was dead, obviously, with the Dolphins losing in the wild card round. The Bills are out, and the divisional, which seems like a proper time to kind of gauge the temperature. What is your concern level when you look at, we see where the Jets sit, but you look at the rest of the AFC East. You see the Buffalo Bills, you see the Miami Dolphins. Both those teams obviously made the playoffs, and the Patriots are under a whole new era with Gerard Mayo. And he's been dropping some hints. He's like, I got cash to burn, is what he says on a local radio hit. And then also he kind of gave the hint about the draft. He said, we're going to take a position of need at the most important, like you figure out the rest, and a little wink. By the way, brand new era compared to that, to Bill Belichick, the things we used to get. So amen for Gerard Mayo for the transparency. We really appreciate it. But what's the concern level with the rest of the AFCs? Do you consider anybody threats? Is there anyone that revs your engine that's going to be difficult to surpass? Are you more confident in the Jets? Where do you stand with all that?
So I think all 3 of the teams in the division, they all obviously, pose a threat to a Jets team that, hasn't made the playoffs since 2010. So I don't want to knock them and be like, how could I talk all this trash when the Jets have been as bad as they are? Mm-hmm. I say that to then say, I don't think the Jets are that far away from any of the teams in their division. They're already better than New England. And you obviously look at what's happened with Miami and Buffalo. To me, there's a ceiling with both those teams. We've kind of seen it. And I think if you tell me the Jets have an offseason where they hit on a couple of O linemen and hit on a number 2 receiver and bring back this entire defense, maybe they could work out a way to keep Bryce Huff. You can't sit there and tell me that with a healthy Rodgers, the Jets aren't right there with the top 2 teams in the AFC East. I don't believe in Tua. I hope the Dolphins extend him because I just don't think he's a great quarterback. I think he beats up on bad teams, and anytime he plays a good team, he doesn't play well, and he can't play in cold weather. So I hope they pay him big money. And look, the Bills, they've been a really, really good team, but now they got some cap space scenarios to work through. You question what the deal is with Stephon Diggs moving forward. Is Sean McDermott a big game coach that can get him over the top? These are things you start to wonder and ask yourself. So, look, obviously the Jets have to prove it, and I have major question marks. Major questions I'm asking about the head coach, the OC, the general manager. But the fact of the matter is this: the Jets won 7 games with the worst quarterback room in the NFL this past year. If they could get Rodgers back and add some help with him, the Jets are just as good as any of the teams in the AFC East. I really believe that. I know it's a big if, but I don't think they're that far away.
Again, we're speaking of Jake friggin' Asman, baby. He is there. Jake Asman, okay? The architect of the Jake Asman Show. And, on Sunday, Rich Cimini of ESPN made it very clear in his column that the Jets hope and plan to add a quote-unquote significant addition to the wide receiver room, no matter what way that comes, trade, free agency, draft, or what have you. Jake, if you're running the operation, who is your number one target? Because there's a lot of names out there, but there's the threat of the franchise tag and all kinds of other things that could muddy the waters, and what we've seen with the Antonio Pierce hire, what that could mean to a Devontae Adams trade. Who, regardless of all that, though, just who, if you could pick anyone that you want of the guys who would be available, who is number one for Jake Asman?
For me, it's T. Higgins if he hits the open market because of age and the fact it's just money. I mean, you're talking about a guy who he just wants to be paid. And I don't know if Cincinnati can afford to pay him after they paid Joe Burrow and they got to pay Jamar Chase. So he seems like a guy that truly could be available. That's where I would start. If Michael Pittman hits the market, that's where I would go next. And then I would still call the Raiders about Devontae Adams. I'm not completely giving up on that just because they named Antonio Pierce their permanent coach. They still don't have a quarterback. So I got to figure out what their plan is there. They don't have a GM either. So are we sure that Devontae is definitely in their long-term plans? I'm not convinced 100%. I think it's less likely now, of course, but I would start with those 3. And then, I'm not even going to mention Mike Evans. I think there's a 0% chance he's leaving Tampa, so I'm not even going to go there. And after that, it kind of gets a little worse as far as the tier system goes, but Calvin Ridley's a name who was connected to the Jets a few years ago. He's a guy to me that would be a perfect number 2 to Garrett Wilson as the number 1. That's a guy who's a free agent. You could bring him in for just money. I probably would start with those names I mentioned before, having to maybe pivot to maybe 2 lower tier receivers or use the draft as a way to get a weapon if you hopefully could bring in some adequate O linemen before then.
I'm going to breathe in a little bit of life to Mike Evans, although to your point, it may seem incredibly unlikely based on everything that has happened. But, the Bucs have 1 franchise tag. Baker Mayfield's a free agent. He's coming off a career year. And then you have Mike Evans, who's the older guy. And if you're going to pick one or the other, one gets a tag, one maybe can reach the open market. As we saw with the Giants, was that Daniel Jones-Saquon thing. They were able to last second sign Daniel and then tag Saquon to prevent both from reaching the open market. Maybe that happens with Tampa Bay. But, so I think there's a chance he could, kind of break free. The Bucs didn't sign him long-term before the year. He wanted to. They didn't. Might be a little iffy there. But even putting all that aside, if he does reach the open market, it seems there is a lot of weird beef. Or I don't know what the word to use to describe it. So wild card round happens, and I just tweet out in the middle of the game. All of us are Jets content creators. So, we make connections with whatever we're seeing through a Jets lens. I'm like, wow, Mike Evans would look pretty cool on the Jets. And I got a unbelievable amount of Jet fans going, well, yeah, he drops the ball a lot. I'm like, what? He's had 10 straight 1,000-yard season. We're talking about drops. That's where you people draw the line. So I get that interaction for wildcard weekend. Divisional round, I tweet out again saying, well, understanding the drop issue that apparently happens, Mike Evans out there. People are like, drops? What the hell are you talking about? There's no drop. So I don't understand Jets Twitter one gosh darn bit apparently, but I throw it over to you, Jake. There's been a lot of people saying, over the hill, drop skis. They've been criticizing the Mike Evans resume. And I got to be honest, this guy's a future Pro Football Hall of Famer. Wouldn't the Jets be lucky to get a guy like that and you pair him up with friggin' Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I mean, Devontae. I mean, Mike Evans is Garrett Wilson 10 years from now. He's quarterback proof, right? Garrett's gone over 1,000 yards the last 2 years with 7 different quarterbacks. Most of them were terrible throwing to him. And Mike Evans has done the same thing in his career with Jameis Winston and Mike Glennon and Baker Mayfield. And obviously, he had the great 3-year run with Brady. But still, most of Mike Evans' career has been spent with below average to average quarterbacks, and he continues to produce. Guy's a Hall of Famer, still playing at a very high level. He's also not leaving. He wants to stay in Tampa. The Bucs general manager made it clear when he spoke to the media that they want to keep Mike Evans. It's a priority for them. So the Jet fans who don't want Mike Evans were probably the same Jet fans who were scoffing at the idea of hiring Mike Tomlin if the Steelers were dumb enough to let him go. So I pay no attention to it. If you don't want Mike Evans, you don't know ball. And ultimately, if you're the Jets, you're gonna have to come up with another plan because you're not gonna be able to get Mike Evans.
Yeah, that's what it seems like the talk of the town is at this point, as the Jets again look to improve the situation. You mentioned at the very beginning when we were kind of referencing the AFC East stuff that you don't believe that they're as far away as some people may seem to indicate, especially in the division. When we look at the other teams that are possibly there, there's a lot of obvious things the Jets need to do, and the sexy thing is all the Jets content creators out there are doing their off-season plans, their mock off-season, how they would fix the New York Jets. Jake, what are the first 3 or 4 things on your list if you're looking to fix the Jets and put them in a better position to compete in 2024? Again, everyone talks about the significant addition at wide receiver. You could include that, of course, as part of your the Jake Asman game plan. But what else is on this list?
I'll make it easy. I mean, everyone knows receiver O-line, but when free agency starts, put a 2-year offer on the table for Jacoby Brissett, making him the highest paid backup quarterback in the NFL, and put a clause in his contract where he could opt out at the end of the year because God forbid something happens. Because I want to explain this a little further.
Please do.
Because I think the Jets are going to have competition for Brissett, especially with all these teams that suffered injuries at quarterback this year. So what I would do if I'm the Jets is overpay him because it's a need and put a clause in his deal where he could opt out at the end of the year because let's say, God forbid, something does happen to Aaron Rodgers and he goes out there and plays well. He should get an opportunity to hit the market again and take advantage of the fact that it would be another year where he looked good in that type of role, maybe cash in again. So I just need him for 2024. That's all I'm focused on if I'm the Jets. So 2-year deal, give him an opt-out after 1, overpay to make sure you get him so you don't even have to think about backup quarterback. Don't even have to entertain the morons that want to keep Zach Wilson or any of that.
Well, before we get to the rest of your potential plan, I'm intrigued by the quarterback thing because I don't know this because I'm wearing a Jet hat on my head, and Jake, you're one of the wonderful Jets content creators as well. How attractive is the Jets? Because so long story short, 66 quarterbacks were used this past season in terms of starting games. So I imagine a lot of teams are going to be like, Jesus, we need to start investing in the backup quarterback position if we're a team. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of teams out there that will be interested. Where do the Jets stand on the attractiveness? Because as their QB2, obviously, Aaron Rodgers, there's no competition. They're clearly QB2. But there will be other places like Pittsburgh where there will be a chance potentially for whoever that QB2 is to potentially overtake the guy, which maybe is more attractive, but I don't know. So I lay all that out to say, and I have no idea what the answer is, so that's why I'm asking you. But how attractive are the Jets with all these other teams that are also going to have openings at the backup quarterback spot?
Well, the Jets aren't as attractive as a team that will say, hey, Jacoby, we'll give you a chance to compete with a rookie we're going to draft. Like if New England called Jacoby Brissett and say, hey, we're going to bring you in. We're probably taking a quarterback 3rd overall, but hey, we might not play him right away. You're going to get a chance to play. He might take that opportunity. Like remember, he signed with the Browns when Deshaun Watson was going to be suspended for 11 games. So he went to a place that gave him a chance to get on the field. So I think that's why the Jets got to overpay. If that's your top guy, you got to incentivize a reason for him to come to you, which is money. So I think they're, as far as 40, he is 40. He's going to be 41 in next December. He's coming off injury. Maybe Brissett looks at it like, hey, there's no way he's making it through all 17. That could be an avenue for me to play. But you also just never know, right? Like we all thought Tua wasn't going to make it through a season. He played 18 games this year. Mike White never saw the field. So it's tricky. I think the Jets are attractive, but not as attractive as a team that could give him an opportunity to compete for a job, which is why I want to overpay just to lock him in and not have to worry about it.
I've been asking a lot of people all the positive stuff in terms of who they'd want to bring in. Who is there someone that you've studied as you've been kind of assessing free agency to be? Is there a free agent that you don't want the Jets to touch with the 10-foot pole. For some reason, they're giving you a bad vibe. And, of course, Joe Douglas's own history is wildly inconsistent in free agency. Who's someone you want to avoid that you'd prefer the Jets not chase?
There's two. Probably
okay.
Dalvin Cook and then Mecole Hardman.
Yeah, those two. Who, by the way, both are competing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. So, not bad. What'd you make of that discourse, by the way? So I heard Rich Eisen on his show, kind of like, geez, of course the Jets, Dalvin Cook ran for more yards or whatever this game was, and then in 10 of the 15 games or something with the Jets. A lot of people were dunking on the Jets over the weekend for Dalvin Cook. What was your response to that?
I mean, he had 8 carries for 23 yards, Rich. Let's take a breath, all right? It's been a tough year for all of us, but we don't need to be that upset that Dalvin Cook had one nice run in garbage time at the end of that game. Let's take a deep breath, all right? Let's calm down. I mean, Mecole Hardman nearly cost the Kansas City Chiefs a game. That doesn't get brought up, though. There was no one wanted to make the Mecole Hardman jokes, but believe me, if he scored that touchdown, everyone was ready to dunk on the Jets for letting Mecole Hardman go, but he almost cost them a game. So, I mean, come on, people. Let's calm down. Dalvin Cook is what he is. He is not a huge factor for the Ravens, and neither is Mecole Hardman.
Jake, you do ESPN Radio in New York. You've done ESPN Radio in Houston. You've been all over the map. So have you found a better answer to why the Jets are the team that everyone dunks on? You've been in different markets. Why is that?
Huge fan base, Paul. Passionate fan base.
Sure.
And there's always an East Coast bias with a lot of the sports discourse, right? ESPN's based in Connecticut and in New York. They kind of are the order of conversation. So I just think naturally there's more Jet fans that work behind the scenes that do the woe is me act. I think there's more people that are maybe Giants fans or fans of the Bills or fans of a rival team. So the Jets are kind of like the easy target. And I think a lot of it is an East Coast bias. And it's a testament to the greatness of the Jet fan base. I mean, it's a passionate fan base, despite the fact the team has only won one Super Bowl and it was, 55 years ago. I think you see something similar with the Knicks as well because of how big their fan base is. People use the Knicks for clicks, but I think it's a common thing with a New York team because of the reach you get when you talk about such a big fan base that the Jets have.
All right, prognosticate for me here. What is the first Jets move or the big first Jets sexy rumor all of us content creators jump on somewhere between now and free agency for the New York Jets? What's the big one that immediately has all of us saying, okay, we need to rush to the computer, we need to rush to the studio to record this? What is that?
If T. Higgins hits the market, I think the Jets are going to go all in and trying to get him. I think they're going to use the 10th pick on a lineman. So I think the Jets are going to be ultra aggressive in trying to lock up a stud next to Garrett Wilson. And the reason why I say that is if you remember, Garrett Wilson during his exit press conference basically vented his frustrations, how this year was unacceptable. He's like, it's going to be great to get Aaron back, but it can't just be about Aaron. And then he met with Joe Douglas. And then the next day he went on Bart and Hahn on ESPN New York, and he said that he's calmed down. The Jets were able to basically answer any questions he had. Well, let's be real. What could they have told him? One, we're going to get a better backup. So if God forbid something happens to Aaron, you're not screwed. And two, we're going to get a complimentary receiver next to you so you don't have to be double teamed, and we can allow you to play inside and outside given whatever the defense is calling for. So I think if you kind of connect the dots, that would connect the Jets to a backup, which we already knew, and being ultra aggressive after a receiver that could hit the market, like a T. Higgins or Michael Pittman or Calvin Ridley, for example. So that's my big thing. I think the Jets are going to go hard for a receiver in free agency.
All right, a couple quickies before we get you out of here, Jake. Who is the best person you've ever interviewed? What was the best interview you've ever had?
Man, this is tough. A best Jet interview I've ever done was Joe Namath.
Okay,
I've had him on a couple times. The first time was amazing because it was on my radio show at the time on SB Nation Radio, and his comments about, hey, and this is how long ago this was. The Jets were like 0-6, 0-7, and I was like, Joe, if they keep losing and they're sitting there with the number one pick, I know we love Sam, but they got to take Trevor Lawrence, right? And he gave a great answer on that. That was like the cover of Newsday the next day.
Yeah, it went viral.
Yeah, you probably remember it. So it was cool. So Namath would probably be my number one like Jet interview. Revis and Klecko last summer was pretty cool too, just kind of being in the middle of all that.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And then I will say non-Jet interviews, like crazy random ones.
Sure.
Martha Stewart, the Backstreet Boys, or MC Hammer. Like those are like three that come to mind.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I think the Martha one. What was that? Super Bowl Radio Row. Is that what that one was?
It was. She was promoting her Super Bowl commercial for Doritos with
With
Snoop Dogg.
Snoop Dogg, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, what about and because I'm just fascinated with your interviewing career, who's the surprising one that maybe got tossed your way in some form or fashion, and he kind of had low expectations. All right, well, this is just an interview I'm going to have to do, and then it happened, or in the middle of it, you're like, whoa, okay, kind of caught me off guard. This is even better than I thought, or worse, you had high expectations, and then it ended up being underwhelming in some way.
Well, I'll give you one that sucked, and then I could give you
Okay.
the answer to your first question. I had a chance to interview Ice Cube, and it was
Oh,
when he was promoting the Big Three, that 3-on-3
oh, yes,
basketball
yes,
league.
yes, yeah.
So I know why it sucked. He probably did 50, 100 interviews that day and was being
Ah,
asked the same thing. So he just had no energy or didn't care by the time he did my show. But he was terrible, man. Like I was like so excited. I'm a big fan of his music, and he could not have been a worse interview. Like I wanted to like ask him about some of my like favorite movie of his and talk about like 21 Jump Street, but he was just terrible, man. It was a
ah,
huge disappointment. But
that sucks.
I'll give you one that I went in thinking it was not going to be good, but it ended up being awesome.
Yeah.
Cam Newton at the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. He
Mm.
could not have been nicer, more down to earth, funny, charismatic. I was shocked, and I know Cam gets a lot of slack because he
Yes.
was very polarizing. As far as how he treated me and my co-host who did the interview with him, could not have been a nicer guy. I'm a Cam Newton fan for life because of that.
Wow, that's so freaking cool. We'll end on this. I know one of the names on this list, but who else is on the bucket list of guys you want to get on the show that you're either actively seeking to get on the show, or maybe even like bucket list, like you haven't even attempted to yet, but they're on the list for at some point in the future?
So is the one that Rex?
Yes.
Yes. So it's kind of weird, right? Because our mutual friend Ty Butler and I, we filled in for DiPietro and Rothenberg
Yes.
together.
Yeah.
And Rex came on for 15 minutes as part of like his weekly spot on the show that he does. But I really want to get Rex on my YouTube show so I could kind of do like a long form
Mm-hmm.
interview with him. So I'll still say Rex for sure. And I've been working on Sanchez for a long time. I would
Yeah.
love to do a long form interview with Mark Sanchez because that's my guy, man. Those teams are my favorite teams growing up. And I was like the way, people in the Jet fan base at times defend Zach Wilson, the truthers, that was me with Sanchez. I will defend myself saying at least Mark won 4 road playoff games in 2 years. Meanwhile, Zach Wilson's done nothing. But I will say, like, the way people defend Zach Wilson, that was me growing up with Sanchez. I would love the opportunity to get him on the YouTube show for kind of a long form look back on his Jet career interview.
I'd love to watch that person. I'm going to be honest. I don't think I've seen Mark do many of those kinds of interviews. Like he obviously does the exchange with Nick Mangold, the Jets commercial production in house, but I haven't seen him do exactly what you're seeking, maybe ever, about his Jets career or career in general.
I think he would probably be a little creeped out just how much I know about him and those teams. So hopefully I get the chance to do it, man. I've tried reaching out to his people before, just haven't been able to get anything locked in. But that's a big goal of mine this offseason. I want to get Rex. I want to get Mark on at some point between now and opening day next year.
All right. Well, a great list and a great offseason, quite frankly, to do it. So hopefully that greases the wheels a little bit, too, of how the Jets are supposed to perform. Well, Jake, I always cherish these opportunities to chat, man. And like I'll always tell you every time we do these and we talk about it privately, the Hall of Fame thing, man. If we could have some offseason event or even season event that matches half of what that was, it's going to be a great day in the neighborhood, because that's forever going to be on that list of things that I tell my grandkids about and everything that we did. That's a badass, awesome trip. The trip, the crap that happened on the trip, all of it, man. So freaking cool. Love that.
It was a blast, man. It's funny because I remember just saying to myself that weekend, hey, I don't know what's coming this year, but like just enjoy this because this might be as good as it gets. And thank God I like took it all in and
Savored that,
enjoyed it.
apparently, right?
I mean, 4 plays in, obviously everything drastically changed, but like that weekend, like the Jet fan takeover, like you couldn't go anywhere without finding Jet fans and Jet chants and the content creator party you and I were a part of, but we had probably like 300 people roll through that night. It was a blast, man. Hopefully there's something like that again, either this off season or something we could do, all together during the actual season, because that was such a fun weekend.
Do you think there's any chance to? I just heard this. It's just a random story, but on my radio show, we have a Lions guy who lives out in Michigan, and he came on and he said there was nothing like that first Lions Rams playoff game. Then even the one that just happened over the weekend, because he said it was just so special and unique. Like we'll never get that again. That moment you're talking about, I agree. It was so spectacular. Random jet chants at restaurants we're going to. Like, what the hell? We're in freaking wherever, Canton, Ohio. What is freaking happening here? Do you think we'll be able to reach that climax through this offseason, build up the hype, as Aaron Rodgers says, or will it just never be the same as that was? It's going to be great, but just never that point. What do you think?
I think the hype will be back, but I don't think it will reach what we were feeling week 1 of last year because there's no Hard Knocks this summer. There's now questions about just Aaron coming off this injury, even though I think he's still going to be a very good quarterback next season. I don't think it will reach that. I will say, though, if the Jets win an AFC East and they're playing a home playoff game at MetLife for the first time in that building's history with the Jets, then I think the hype and excitement can reach what we kind of saw, for example, in Detroit in their wild card win, or even yesterday, or obviously, week 1, I was in the building. It was the greatest environment I've ever been in for last year, even with the Rodgers injury. I think if the Jets were playing, a home playoff game for the first time ever in MetLife, first home playoff game for the Jets in over 20 years, I think the building would be on that level, especially if like the NFL gave the Jets like that Saturday night or Sunday night spot in Super Wild Card Weekend, like what the Lions had. Then I think, Paul, we could get that type of atmosphere with this Jet fan base.
I think you're right. Again, the Lions kind of inspired me. They're like hadn't won the division in 30 years. The Jets, of course, haven't done since 2002. All the marbles and everything sets up, especially how I look at the AFC East. I'm like, boy, I can see it, baby. I have the AFC East hat and T-shirt combo in the cart. I'm just waiting to hit the purchase button on that for next season. Should be awesome. Jake, thanks for popping in, brother. We always love and appreciate you, man.
Anytime, man. Have a good morning, everybody. Appreciate you watching the wonderful program that is the Boy Green Experience.
That's right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you.